This is the legend of the spectacular Rocky Mountain ghost towns along Cinnamon Pass, Colorado. Howdy there, I'm Zane Lewis, and today I'll be telling you the story of 5 small, forgotten, but important ghost towns along Cinnamon Pass, Colorado, which is a part of the Alpine Loop in between Lake City and Animas Forks, and once part of the Park-Whitecross mining district. For years, miners forged out a living in these towns, dealing with harsh weather and disasters, all while trying to strike it rich. How were these towns founded? What hardships did their residents suffer through? What successes did they have? And what led to their demise? Well, much of what we know about these towns is limited, but today, using some of the few historical documents that have survived and photos I've taken, we'll rediscover these forgotten legends of Colorado. Our story begins all the way back in 1860 when Captain Charles Baker led an expedition across what would eventually become Cinnamon Pass on his way to find gold at the future townsite of Silverton. Originally named Baker Park in his honor, the results of his trip there were so meager that his companions considered lynching him. In 1874, the Hayden survey traveled across Cinnamon Pass, checking to see if it would make for good wagon roads. Due to its altitude and rugged terrain, the team did not believe that it would make a viable route. However, due to the need for eastern access to the mines in the San Juan Mountains, a man named Enos Hotchkiss began constructing the road anyways, completing it in 1877, becoming a vital link between the towns of Animas Forks and Lake City, even getting a phone line strung up along it. The first town to be established along the pass was Tellurium in July 1875, being named after the extremely rare ore found in the area. Located near the junction of Adams Creek and the Lake Fork of the Gunnison River circa the head of Burrows Park, a post office was established that same year, with over 500 people calling the town home. The camp, along with the surrounding towns in Burrows Park, were a part of the Park-Whitecross mining district. A detailed town site was laid out, with an expensive mill being constructed to accommodate the ores from the mines. Despite this, Tellurium's lifespan would be very short, and it became a ghost town by 1880. Or did it? Now, given how little information there is about these towns, some say that Tellurium actually survived, with its name getting changed to Whitecross that year. This theory can be supported by the fact that the pictures on the internet seem to show the same buildings at the two towns, and that Whitecross started up in the same year that Tellurium died. This map shows the towns as being together, adding more credence to this idea. At some point, likely around 1880, the mining camp of Burrows Park was established in the valley, with the town of Whitecross sitting a quarter of a mile above it, whose name originated from the nearby Whitecross Mountain, which, in its geological formation, had a very visible white cross. In fact, all the towns in the area would eventually become a part of a grouping called Burrows Park, including the town itself. A post office was opened in 1880 at Whitecross, but for some reason it was misnamed Burrows Park. The name would be updated to Whitecross in 1882, with mail getting delivered from Lake City by pack trains on a daily basis. In fact, during the winter, the community was still able to receive daily mail, thanks to a man named Tom Bryon who traversed Cinnamon Pass on ski or snowshoes while transporting mail to the towns of Animas Forks and Mineral Point. Whitecross's The Hotel de Clausson was everyone's favorite meeting spot between the neighboring camps. By 1900, a store, saloon, boarding house, stables, and a hotel all called the town home. Over 300 men received mail at the town's post office. For a time, there was a miner who lived at Whitecross who usually drank coffee before going out on the night shift. In his cabin, he had 2 coffee pots, one of which he used to store 4 pounds of blasting powder. One day, in a huge mistake, he put the blasting powder pot on the stove. As previously mentioned, these 4 towns were a part of the Park-Whitecross mining district, which blossomed in the mid-1870s. During that time, the Gunnison's Mines Company built a mill to service the many mines within the area, which possibly numbered as high as 100. However, most weren't worth a saying, thus reducing the amount of working mines to likely around 30. Altogether, these mines came to employ over 200 miners, and about a mile above Burrows Park, a respectable reductions work was crafted to separate the rich-paying minerals from the rock. During the summer, the towns of the combined community of Burrows Park usually had a population of 200 people each, with hardly anyone living there during the winter, thanks to them being over 10,000 feet above sea level. A stagecoach line between Lake City and Animas Forks served their residents, with a fare of $3 between them and Lake City, and a fare of just $1.50 to Animas Forks. It's unknown when Burrows Park and Whitecross died out. We know that Whitecross was still active as late as 1912, when the Whitecross post office shut down, and given that post offices usually close when towns are in decline, we can assume that the town died out soon afterwards, definitely by 1920. Located a little bit down the road, Argentum is believed to have been founded in 1875 as a supply center for the mines. Like Tellurium/Whitecross, it was named for the ores found in the area, and its population possibly grew to as high as 500 people. Despite never being formally plated as a town site, a post office was built in 1876, and 12 cabins, a blacksmith shop, 2 stores, and 3 hotels all sprang up. On September 2nd, 1876, the San Juan Prospector wrote about Argentum, saying, quote, "At the mouth of Copper Creek is the newest town, Argentum by name, the appellation seeming very proper, from the wonderful rich mines that have been found in the district, of which it is at present the metropolis." While some say the town's residents numbered in the hundreds, archaeological surveys suggest 25 to 50 people lived there, being an all-male camp. Unlike some mining camps, the miners had easy access to canned goods, fresh meat, liquor, mining supplies, and general merchandise. Argentum was located on the northeast side of the Lake Fork, above its confluence with Silver Creek, and towards the end of Burrows Park. Nearby, the Whitecross mine was dug, and a sawmill was also created. While the post office shut down in 1882, the camp was able to survive until 1889, by which time the place's business had also closed. Nevertheless, about 4 or 5 cabins continued to be occupied into the early 1900s, with the town being completely abandoned by 1910. In 1926, a local miner named Bryon Coffin, who had spent a significant portion of his life in Argentum, died. His obituary gives us a glimpse as to what his time there was like and how life was. Quote, "In those days, the successful miner was capitalist and mechanic, manager, superintendent, and company chemist all in one. The same keen interest in the best way of doing things, in the accomplishment of fine workmanship which he had shown at home, caused men often to seek the advice and assistance of Coffin in the seeking of a shaft or locating a bed of ore. But the day of the independent miner passed, with the coming of the big company, and there passed too, the delightful democratic comradeship from cabin door to cabin door." These mining camps largely died out due to the sheer remoteness, high elevation, and of course bad roads and decreasing amounts of ore being found, with all of them dying out by the early 1900s. But while the towns of Burrows Park went through a boom and bust cycle and died out quickly, another town along Cinnamon Pass would have much greater fortunes. Sherman, Colorado, was founded in 1877, being named for Sherman Williams, who had come to the area 2 years prior, in 1875. The town had alleyways and wide streets upon its immediate founding, and rich strike after rich strike were made in the 1870s and early 80s, which brought numerous new residents to the town. The main ores mined in the area were gold and silver, and some of the mines around the town that supplied these minerals were the New Hope, Smile of Fortune, and Minnie Lee, all of which provided vital jobs to the camp's economy. Within a few years, the Black Wonder mine, located on a hillside just north of town, became the largest producer in the immediate area, even building its own mill. In 1881, a general store was opened, along with the Sherman House Hotel, which had a saloon for all the miners to get drunk at. A post office was also opened, however it only operated off and on for the duration of Sherman's existence. One of the biggest buildings in the town housed a butcher shop, slaughterhouse, a dormitory, and a bakery. Winters in Sherman were tough, with heavy snows making getting to the town a living hell, and at times the residents struggled to have enough supplies. Every spring, flooding routinely hit the area, while in the summer, thanks to the relaxed mountain conditions, as many as 300 people would reside in the town. In 1895, the famous Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, which had built a line to the nearby Lake City in 1889, was constructing more lines throughout the area, and railroad ties were cut from the hillsides and floated down the Lake Fork of the Gunnison River, floating all the way from Sherman to Lake City. In 1893, when Congress and President Grover Cleveland repealed the Sherman Silver Purchase Act, silver prices dropped drastically, causing mines all across Colorado, including in Sherman, to close. Nevertheless, Shermanites persevered and continued mining the various ores in the nearby mountains until 1921. The town's history took a dark turn and began to come to an end when a dam on the Lake Fork of the Gunnison River ruptured, resulting in the valley getting flooded. Sherman's residents simply saw no reason to rebuild, and most everyone left. A few miners continued to live in the immediate area until about 1930, which is when Sherman, like the other boomtowns along Cinnamon Pass, faded into history. Another ghost town along Cinnamon Pass is called Sterling. Almost nothing is known about the town, and we can't even pinpoint its exact location. Close to the top of the pass, the remains of the Tabasco mine and mill can be found, along with 2 cabins, which along with information on ghosttowns.com, leads me to believe that this may have been Sterling. If so, we can assume that it was once a fairly large mining camp, likely starting up and winding down at the same time as the other ghost towns we've covered. And with that, despite the amount of riches brought out of the mountains, and the hardships endured and memories made here, the mining towns of Cinnamon Pass slipped into the dustbin of history. So, what remains of these phenomenal encampments today? Well, to start with, each one of them is surrounded by some absolutely incredible scenery, especially Sherman, which may as well be in Switzerland. Seriously, nothing beats these mountains. Despite its once fairly large size, today there are very few remains of Sherman, with some partially buried cabins still in existence, along with foundations and some ancient equipment. Located about 1.5 miles from Lake City, there are multiple hiking trails a little bit after the town. 2 cabins remain at the site of what was once both Tellurium and Whitecross, and I believe there are some foundations hidden in the ground. An abandoned mine with a head frame stands right next to the town site, with a wall in front and small building next to it. When I visited in September of 2021, many trees lay all across the ground, likely due to an avalanche or heavy snow. Journeying to Argentum, this is where the basis for this documentary began. I was riding along in a tour hosted by San Juan Backcountry's awesome guide Garrett, and I randomly noticed the remains of a structure on a hillside and got out to look. After finding an interpretive text at the site, I found out the name of the town and have been fascinated with the area ever since. Very little remains of Argentum. The only structural remains I could find were this small log building, although thanks to the sign there I believe that some foundations may still exist, however being mostly buried. Its surroundings are pure. If you're looking for a quiet, picturesque ghost town that you'll get nostalgic for a time you never existed in, then this is it. As for Burrows Park, a fully restored building stands next to part of another one alongside the road. These 2 structures were restored back in 1989 by a wonderful group of volunteers, serving as a remnant of a long gone past. Aside from these 2 buildings, I'm unaware of any more remains at the Burrows Park town site. However, as with all the other towns, it's quite possible that some foundations or artifacts have been buried or are very difficult to see. Sterling, the most unknown of any of the mining camps, may actually have possibly the highest amount of remains of any of them. With 2 intact cabins at the possible site, there are some fascinating mining remains there, with the collapsed Tabasco mill laying on the floor. There is also at least 1 tram tower in the nearby area, and judging by its trajectory, the tram system went up and over the mountains, perhaps all the way to Animas Forks. Altogether, these camps make up a beautiful part of Colorado's history, filled with outlaws, gold, and adventure. Many of our biggest cities were originally just mining or railroad camps. Mining offered millions of exploit-seeking Americans the ability to strike it rich, and in the process, they tamed the wilderness of the West and created civilizations that can still be traced today, offering viewers a sense of awe and nostalgia for something beautiful that we'll never be able to experience again. Today, the legacy of the brave pioneers and settlers who tamed Colorado, along with the rest of our country, can still be seen and felt by just visiting a nearby abandoned mine shaft, riding on the historic Durango and Silverton narrow gauge railroad, or even just watching an 18-year-old high school student on YouTube share his love for history like I am right now. And thanks to the historians and regular viewers like you, the stories and legends of what these Americans built will last for years into the future. Yeah, the pioneers who settled Cinnamon Pass and built the incredible ghost towns and mines we see today left one hell of a legacy, didn't they? They crossed one of the most unforgiving routes in the San Juan Mountains, simply in search of a better life, some striking it rich, some falling short, but all getting stumped by the pure beauty of the area. They dug these mines and built these towns, simply trying to attain a better life. Mining offered the pioneers a way to strike it rich and live the way God intended us to. And today, whether it's in the deserts of the town of Ruby, Arizona, the forested mountains of Monte Cristo in Washington, or the snow-capped mountain peaks surrounding Burrows Park along Cinnamon Pass in Colorado, you can still see America's Wild West legacy, raw, rugged, and beautiful. I'm Zane Lewis. Thanks for watching.